It's Carl here from Presentation Expressions, and I'm on the line with Craig Hadden. He's coming to us all the way from Sydney, Australia, so we're really happy to have him here with us today. And the reason why I'm talking to him is because I saw a really interesting post that he did on his blog about a skill in presentations, about how you should answer people's key question when you're giving a presentation. And we're going to talk to him about that a little bit later on. But first, we want to find out who exactly is Craig Hadden. So please introduce yourself to us, Craig.
Hi, Craig Hadden, as Carl said, and I work in my day job as an instructional designer, so that's developing learning materials, usually online. And in my spare time, I've started this blog just a couple of months ago called Remote Possibilities on WordPress, and it's just about presentation skills and using PowerPoint in a more effective way.
So why did you call it Remote Possibilities, actually?
It's a play on words, I suppose. Remote possibilities being a slim chance on the one hand, that's one meaning of it. But also, like in the header picture on my blog, there's a picture of a hand holding a remote control. And when you're presenting in person, a remote control is such a key thing, a key tool to use so that you can keep your eye on the audience. You're not having to be stuck at your laptop advancing the slides. You can just do it subtly as you're talking and keeping eye contact on the audience. So hence the remote possibilities seemed like a good idea at the time, I guess.
It is a good idea. Actually, I do quite like it. When I saw it, I was like, well, that's a really cool name. So I did quite like that, actually. So it's a really good choice. So, why did you even start the blog? I mean, you're an instructional designer already, and you've already, you're presenting to people all the time and teaching them all the time and creating materials. So why the blog?
Well, presentations have fascinated me for years. It's going on nearly 20 years ago now. I developed some computer-based training, as it was called then. Now it's known as e-learning course. On PowerPoint 4, it was in those days for Windows. So that would have been around the time of Windows 95 coming in and that sort of thing. So it's a good few years ago, and all that time in studies and that sort of thing, when I've been going to university, I've used presentations quite a lot, and in work, obviously, as most people do. And it's just a really fascinating medium, I think, where it's combining. On the one hand, it's an art because you're using visuals and you're almost using stagecraft, you could say, in a performance to the audience. And on the other hand, there's so many technical aspects to it, and particularly when you're presenting online, you can upload your presentation to the web and tweet about it on Twitter and all the rest of it. So it's a whole range of skills that people need, and it's forever changing and keeping such an interesting medium.
So, and like you said about the tweeting aspect of it, I mean, this is sort of trailing off what we're talking about, but as far as that is concerned, do you say, okay, let people tweet and use their mobile devices during a presentation, or are you one of those people that says no?
Yeah, there's a bit of a debate about that at the moment, but I think you're not going to be able to stop people using, be it laptops at a desk in a boardroom type meeting or presentation, or in a conference. They might be, just on their iPad or iPhone or their smartphone or whatever sort it is. And some people are saying to really embrace that. So, for example, Olivia Mitchell, who's got a great blog, speakingaboutpresenting.com, she is going with that flow, if you like. And similarly, Cliff Atkinson, who wrote Beyond Bullet Points, that's sort of one of the groundbreaking books about presenting in a new way and getting away from the bullet point, the old way of presenting. He's written a whole book about using the back channel. So that is using social media and again, embracing that and not trying to fight it because the audience is going that way. If you go with the audience, then you'll have them on side straight away.
Yeah, it is true. I totally agree that that's the way to go. And I've even just told recently to some people, I said, if you feel free to be on your phones and to tweet away about what's going on, whether you like it or not, whatever your opinion is, it's totally fine. So, like I said, you can't stop it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so now take us through the post. I mean, I was, when I read that, I thought, wow, it's really great because you broke it down into so many different sections and you detailed it so well. Why don't you actually take us through that post of, answer people's key question and start with maybe an overview of that particular post?
Sure, yeah. Well, there is as I was saying before, quite a lot to presenting. So I've broken down what I call the first framework. This particular post fits in a whole framework that I'm publishing various posts on, called this first framework. And the first part of that is the F stands for focus attention. So it's really about grabbing people's attention at the start of your presentation, but also keeping that throughout. And this particular post, called Answering People's Key Question, is part of focus and attention. And it's really about, there are 4 different aspects to it in this particular post, where it's answering the key question that is in everyone's mind in the audience. And that question is, what's in it for me? They're not interested in the presenter, you or I presenting. They're not even particularly interested in the topic per se. So if you're an expert in your topic, as you probably are if you're presenting on it, it's quite risky to go down the line of saying every little minute detail that you know about that topic, because the chances are the audience is at a different level of skill or knowledge about that technique or that topic. And so they don't want that much information. They want the aspects of the topic that are going to help them in their work or their study or whatever it is. And you need to come at it from their angle. So this particular post is about answering that key question, what is it, what's in it for me? That's what the audience wants to know.
Great, and it's really great that you've actually broken it down like that. So is that why you wrote it? Because of that idea of, we do have to help people understand that it's not about what you want to present, but it's really about what the audience wants to present? Is that why you wrote the post in the first place?
Yeah, that's the most important thing about it. I just had all these ideas about presenting in my head, and I'd read lots of books, like I mentioned before. There's Cliff Atkinson's written a couple of books, and Nancy Duarte's again written a couple of books, and there's Presentation Zen and so on. So many great books out there, so many great blogs and resources, and I had all this information, all these ideas in my head, spinning around, if you like, and I just, it's like Barbara Minto said, who wrote The Pyramid Principle. That's, again, another great book, which isn't specifically about presenting, but she does have a chapter in there about presenting. She said, you can't truly know what you think until you express it. Either you write it down or you say it out loud. So it was about getting those ideas out and formulating them. And once you've written them down, you can take a look at them and ask people what their feedback is and so on, and just work with them and progress your ideas. Put them out there and get other people to say what they think.
Very good. I mean, very, very nice way to sort of talk about that, because there are so many things out there, like you said, and to actually have a place where you can, put it all together for people, it's actually a really great resource as well. So it's really great. So who did you specifically write this for then? Did you have a target audience in mind when you wrote this then?
It's really quite broad. I think most presenters could probably get something out of it, because at the one end, there's people who might be new to presenting, might be presenting at university and perhaps have not done that before, or presenting it in their studies or the language school, whatever it is. And I'd really put along with those people who are traditional presenters who, might use bullet points, or they're sticking with the older style of presenting. So for all those people, it can show a new way of presenting about being more audience-oriented and putting the audience first. And then there's people, even existing bloggers or people who've written books about presenting recently. There's something in it for them too, I'd say, because I've got a slightly different perspective and just drawing from various different sources and putting things into a framework. Hopefully, quite a few people hopefully might be able to find something in there for them.
We talked about why it's important and things like that. I think that we need to know how to actually do it. So why don't you take us through the entire post and some of the highlights or whatever you want to go through.
Okay, so yeah, as I mentioned, there's 4 different aspects to this particular post, and the first of those is about structuring your whole presentation in terms of questions or key points that the audience needs to know. It's really, that's the biggest thing I think about answering the audience's key question. If you structure your whole talk in terms of what is the audience going to be asking about this, if your presentation is about, a new model of car or whatever it is, they might be saying, I've never heard of this model of car before. What is a Model X or whatever the car's called? So you can't just assume that they've got that knowledge. So if you structure your whole talk in terms of what questions does the audience have, then straight away you're oriented your whole presentation to the audience straight away. So that's the first aspect. The second is, before the audience even gets there, they're probably going to see the title of your talk. So if you can use various techniques which I list out in the blog, to title your presentation in the first place, then before the audience even arrives. So if you're presenting in a meeting or at a conference, chances are they'll see the title of your talk and perhaps a little blurb about it, a short description of the talk. And if, again, you can involve your audience through the title by, for example, mentioning an action that they might want to do or a question that they've got in the top of their mind about this topic, then straight away you're getting on their wavelength and they're going to be interested in what you've got to say. That's the second way of answering the audience's key question. The third way is to answer explicitly and early in your presentation. Don't do a whole long introduction. Get straight into the topic from the audience's point of view. So that's the third aspect. And then finally, just a simple one is to use the word you a lot, rather than talking about I, or there might be, for example, in a sales presentation, a salesperson might keep talking about customers and users of a software system or something like that. But if you talk about you do this and you do that, then you're talking directly with the audience and they know who you're talking about. You're not speaking in some generic term. It's a personal conversation and involving them straight away. So those are the 4 different aspects.
Okay. So could you give us sort of maybe like a sort of mock example maybe of some of those aspects? Like, for example, what kind of questions would people be asking themselves, before they even start? Like you said, step number 1, is the questions. What type of questions would they want to ask then, for example?
Well, if they're novices or they're quite new to the topic, the first thing they're going to be asking is, what is this topic? So there might be, there might be jargon that's used, or like in the example I mentioned before of a particular car. If the people aren't familiar, your audience isn't familiar with that jargon, if you like, the model name in that case, then you really need to start by introducing that and not assuming that they know that already. Some of the questions you might have in the title could be things like, why would I want to do this? So, for example, in Olivia Mitchell's guide to presenting, she talks about an organization called Kiva.org, who is a charity organization through which you can lend money to people in developing countries to start a business. And one of the questions you might ask about that is, well, why would I want to do that? Or is it safe to do that? And, are there examples of people who you can quote me? So, for example, Bill Clinton, I think, has backed Kiva.org. And so that's an example where you can say, well, yes, if you've got the question in your mind, who else has done this? Well, here are some examples. So you're tapping into people's minds, into the audience's thoughts already about how they're treating this topic, and you're trying to address those questions that they might not necessarily speak. They might not ask those questions in the presentation out loud, but no doubt they've got them in the back of their mind. So if you can answer those questions, then you're tapping into the way that they're already approaching this topic, whatever your topic is.
Okay, so that's for what questions they might have for the title, and then the third aspect of it, can you give us an example of that, how that would work?
Okay, so that's about answering overtly and early. Mm-hmm. So it's well, there's a guy called Jim Endicott, another blogger who's got a blog about presentation skills again. And what an approach he advocates is to have you can get people on side or get them interested in your topic and start to sell the idea, if you like, of what you're presenting by just using 3 different sentences. So you might say something like, you know how presenting is difficult because people can get distracted so easily. And then the second sentence, you might say, well, what I'm proposing is this 4-step approach where you engage people and answer the questions they've got. And the benefit of that is then they'll pay attention to you, and if they are using their mobile phone, chances are they might be tweeting to a friend saying, hey, you know, this presentation's really good, and it's answering my questions straight away and not spending a whole lot of time on bullet points or whatever it is. So that's another technique you can use, where there are 3 sentences where you can get people's interest and help to keep it during the talk.
Right, so identifying what issue or problem they have right away, and then saying that specifically I have a solution for that, or there's a way to get around that, or whatever, resolve that issue for you, and here's how we're going to do it. So just kind of getting right into it, so they're interested, like you said, right away. Okay, good. And then how do you use you more often in a presentation? Because it is really difficult when people are talking about something they've done themselves. If they're doing research, for example, they talk about, you know, I did this, and, you know, maybe we did this, but how do you turn that around to become you?
Well, you know, if speaking in the Queen's English, you might say, you know, the British royal family is sometimes thought of in a joking way if they're using older style English, where people say one this and one does that and so on. If you can generalize it and modernize it, people nowadays tend to just say, you go down the street and you do this and you do that, instead of one does this and one does that. So it can be as simple as that. In case of research, you know, I guess it gets a little more difficult, but again, it's in terms of just generalizing it and using the word you, not specifically to mean a person in the audience, but just one people in general. So you can use that you in that way as well.
Maybe the idea of how we can just sort of choose one person that we're thinking of, that we're trying to speak to, instead of trying to speak to everybody in a general sense, maybe thinking, okay, who specifically am I talking to? So when I do say you, I really mean you, specifically one person that I want to speak to.
Yeah, that's right. And that's a handy technique actually when you're presenting online. So if you're doing a webinar, the audience is unseen and unknown. And there's a blogger called Ken Mole who's really good on tips particularly for presenting online. And what he says is, as you're suggesting, you know, think in terms of the audience, not only think in terms of the audience, but speak to the audience, not in terms of the general population, like all of you out there today, but you can connect with them individually and say, you know, you listening at home watching this video, I'd like you to consider this, this, and this, and make it, again, more of a personal conversation.
Right, there you go, exactly that. I think the personal conversation and saying, you know, that I am speaking directly to you, and then even if, you know, they know that you didn't create it just for them, but, you know, they kind of get, I guess you could say, lost in the magic almost.
Caught up in the moment.
Right, get caught up in the moment, right.
That's what you want to do, to try and encourage this connection with people individually rather than just considering them as part of some big audience.
Right, and it is really almost like how a sales process would work, that you are identifying, you know, let's say if it was a customer, you're doing almost the same kind of process where you're talking about their issues and problems and how you can best solve their problems, and, you know, really directing it towards that person. So I think it's almost following that type of model, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Making it specific and how you can solve that person's problem, not just these are the features of my product that I'm selling and take it or leave it kind of thing. Right. You really want to customize it to that particular customer that you're trying to sell to in that instant.
All right, good, great. So do you want to just quickly summarize what we've just talked about here today then with the answering people's key questions post?
Sure. So there are 4 aspects to it. I'd say, first of all, structuring your whole presentation to answer key questions that the audience has, or key issues that they're considering about the topic. And then you can intrigue them or involve them through the title and the choice of words in the title. That's the second aspect. Third is to answer overtly or explicitly the questions that they have, and orient your whole talk towards approaching it from their point of view, not from you as a salesperson or as an expert in your field, whatever it is. And fourthly, just to use the word you and try and personalize it and make it a conversation with individuals rather than just a broadcast to the masses.
Okay, very good. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about, for example, you and maybe about what you do?
If they would like to visit the blog, it's at remotepossibilities.wordpress.com. And by all means, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you guys. And there's a contact form on the blog as well if you want to make direct contact.
Very good, thank you. Well, Craig, I think that was really fantastic because, like I said, it's really good to have that kind of framework because people always ask, how do I actually figure out what to say to my audience? I don't know. So when you go through those 4 steps and then there's some sort of process for it, I think that's really great because people need that type of system or process just to make their lives a little bit easier. So really appreciate you taking the time out to talk to me today, and hopefully you'll have great success, and also hopefully a lot of people come and see that post as well.
Thanks, Carl.
Okay,
great to talk to you.
Yeah, good. Thank you.